Happy Sunday. Welcome back to Retake the
Mustard!
Week. Yeah, we're starting off with a producer tag, of course we are. Shout out the new Kendrick album, I guess. But it's been an insane week. We've had both EU RMRs that just wrapped up as well, so we know exactly what's gone on with that. We had the Impact League Finals, which are currently ongoing. I believe the playoffs just started for Impact League Finals Season 6. Yep. Bigger Keeper, Imperial FE. We are 2 maps in, and it's 1-1. Shocker. But all right. Before we get into the news, the retake, we first have to thank the people who make this show possible. That's the members. They get access to behind the scenes content, they get interviews, they get prospect demos, they get everything. They also get the right to vote, the right to ask questions on the Q&A, which is coming next weekend. I know next Sunday is the 1st of December, but it just felt like a bit short if we did it this weekend. Also, we didn't notice. So next Sunday will be the member Q&A, so tune in for that. But all right, let's just get right into the show, I think. Yeah, Quacka.
Yeah, let's just go.
Man, let's start in the RMRs. RMRA. I didn't take much from it, to be honest. I'm going to get to that when I get to my point, but what did you like the look of after this RMR?
I think I like a lot of things. I like that the favorites go through. That's kind of what you want in a major qualifier. One team I was quite happy missing out is the one I'm going to talk about now. Sorry, blah. I mean, you have the heaving shits. I have a big hangover, so this is going to be a very blurby episode from me. Yeah, that's what you want for the major qualifier. But one team which I was happy to go out is the one I'm going to talk about, and it's going to be BetBoom. And I'm going to talk about them because I think they could be in quite an interesting position for 2025. And I'm kind of interested to see where they go because I think what I'm going to go with is basically BetBoom went 3-2. They were basically stumblingly close not to make it into the major. They lost to Gamer Legion. Zorti did everything he could, but in that decider game they lose. And yeah, they end up going out of the RMR. I'm quite happy about that. I don't think they've played well enough during the course of the season to be in the major, but they're in an interesting position, I think, because they have a pretty solid team. I think BetBoom are a pretty solid team. They have pretty solid pieces. They have pieces who probably should be doing a lot more than they have been doing, especially on LAN. But they just aren't really doing it. They are also, I think, one of the few, just on a hunch, I think they're one of the few CIS teams or Russian teams who sort of can compete with like tier 1 teams budget wise. So it's not just going to be Spirit, VP, Cloud9. I think BetBoom budget wise can get into that position, maybe steal some players, maybe like be part of some transfer conversations. And that's why I'm interested in them, because I think they need changes. There's several players I think you could cut here. I think if you want to be like reactive, Chiron had a very bad RMR.
Yeah, his
Mayonnaise and
role
sort.
makes no sense on this team. Let's be real.
Yeah,
Since Mayonnaise comes in, what the hell is Chiron really doing? Because
yeah,
Mayonnaise has all his good spots, like his favorite spots, iconic spots. Pretty much, this guy's playing, so it's a bit weird that he's just on the team. It's not even like I can cut him because I think he's garbage. I just have to cut him because I've got someone playing his roles, probably slightly better.
yeah,
It just doesn't make much sense to still have him lurking around.
yeah. This is what I think. Yeah, I think this probably has to happen at some point, and it could be after this major. Depending on how things go for some other Russian teams, there might be some players moving about. But yeah, you could justify cutting him, you could justify cutting Siren, probably you might even be able to justify Nafani, but I wouldn't quite do it. I think he's done a fine enough job. And I'd rather give him some time, I think. But yeah. Anyway, that's why I'm sort of interested in them, because unlike some of the other teams who will probably lose players, might make some signings, when we're talking about Aurora, when we're talking about Amical Perivision, they don't really attract the players that could make them really interesting. But I think BetBoom have a big chance, especially if there isn't a lot of shuffling in that Spirit VP Cloud9 sort of territory. If there isn't a lot of shuffling there, BetBoom I think are in a very interesting position because they can definitely snag some players in that case. And if there is shuffling above, BetBoom is an excellent landing, a good landing spot for, say, if Zontix gets cut, or if maybe Norbert gets cut. That would be honestly, as much as Norbert is not great, he would be he would be a piece on BetBoom who could probably do something. Maybe something crazy happens. Maybe Fame or Flit end up moving on from VP. BetBoom could be a nice landing spot for them. I don't think that happens, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm cautiously interested in seeing what BetBoom do transfer wise next year, and that's sort of something I take away from this RMR.
No, I mean, we had, for this roster, we had, well, I want to say Zorte played great, but he didn't really until they were down 1-2. Like, he wasn't great in the game they won against Unity. Their losses, he was fine, but not good, especially Vitality. That game, they just got smashed, really. But then he starts turning it on, and in that final series against Gamer Legion, yeah, it gives them a chance. You know, the map they win in overtime, the third map as well, really showed up, but it's a Mirage game where, you know, we've talked about Chiron before. I have to talk about him again. Chiron on Mirage was an icon in the past. Like, sure, he was kind of pub stomping, but he was still really confident. He knew the peaks he was going to take. He knew how to play his spots. Like, he was an aggressive and effective player on that map for every team he played for. Even if everything else was going to shit, you could trust him to have a great Mirage. And at this event, he couldn't even muster that. So I do think they have to start making some shuffles, some changes. And yeah, if a Zontix comes available, if a Norbert comes available, you might have to consider. I don't know. I don't think these guys are good replacements for Chiron 1-for-1, but they are definitely players I'd look into. Like Norbert especially, he can play. We've seen him on Virtus Pro, kind of do like the entry sort of side of things, as well as playing supportive anchor roles. He has been a very useful tool for them, and if we look into the deep numbers, we find that he is capable of hitting some crazy shots, like breaking the system, as it were. Not with elite effectiveness, like he's not elite at it, he doesn't do it particularly often, but he's above average, which for a player whose numbers are quite often far below average, you know, I think there's some hidden value in a signing like Norbert. So they do have places to go, I think, next year. I'm always worried, though, about the Nafany of it all, just because when he plays super well, like as an individual, they look phenomenal. But it does feel like when he's not playing great, the calling tends to suffer a bit. His read of the game is off. And so, I don't know. I'm not sure I would want to make wholesale changes. But they did look, despite being 3-2, a little off the pace at this event. Where I think they have aspirations to be a much bigger team, especially when they picked up a player like Nafany, a Siren who came out of Spirit, Zorte, who's like one of the big prodigal talents for the scene. Like, they have big expectations, and they really haven't lived up to them at this event.
Yeah, no, and you could cut Nafany. There's alternatives there. If you want to rehash an old talent, you could go for Jerry. If you want to look at what I think is decently promising in another team, you have Perivision with Alpha. I don't even know who's calling Amcal, but you shouldn't get them. I don't know. Maybe Spirit want to let.
I believe it's Crad in Amcal right now.
Yeah. If Spirit want to let their IGL go, you could go for that. Like, Betboom can probably go shopping around these sort of teams for basically whatever they want. But I think they can also be, you know, rather than, you know, let's hypothetically say that Fame leaves Virtus Pro for some reason. That's a big move. That's a huge move. I don't think he goes to a Nine Pandas or an Aurora or or a Perivision or an Amcal. I think like he would go to a BetBoom or an Amiga. Amiga are also in this conversation. I think he would go to BetBoom if that were to happen.
Yeah.
If he can't upgrade, he's obviously a player I think Spirit or Cloud9 or whoever would be quite happy to have. But if he can't upgrade, I think he would go to BetBoom above pretty much any other team. So I'm just kind of interested to see where they go, because I think they're going to do something. They've been with this roster for the whole year. I think Mayonnaise came in at some point in the start of the year. Yeah, in March, and that's basically the only change they've made. Period. They started with Danists, who didn't really stick around.
Yeah, they haven't been a particularly active team this year either, have they? Like, it doesn't feel like you see them at every online event. They get invites a lot of the time to CCT playoffs, but for the bulk of the year, you see flashes of them, right? You don't see them that consistently, it feels like. So I don't know. Maybe next year they should have to get more active, you know, because they're not a team who've got the ranking for just active invites to everything. They might have to play a lot more events, you know, get a bigger breadth of games played, just to get their points up, get themselves flowing. You know, we always say the teams who end up doing the best in tier 2 are the teams who are the most active, and they a lot of the time end up being the teams who can occasionally punch up, even if they do tend to burn themselves out once they do get up there. It's at least a great way to attract new players, get themselves involved in the top end. And, you know, maybe if a couple of guys get even better, looking at the Manoyers, looking at Zorte, potentially they have a legit tier 1 side in them. It's just for now, it does feel like the roster construction isn't quite right. They're just off kilter a bit. But I wanted to touch on basically what you said, where it's like all the favorites made it through. I was like, yeah, this was an aggressively normal RMR. Like for a Swiss stage, the only blooper in my mind is Sangal looking like absolute trash. Now, losing to Mouse and Cloud9, especially Cloud9 in this form, with Heavy God being the heaviest of goddiest of players, they really disappointed in their loss with Eklot. Like, getting 2-0'd by Eklot was not something I thought they would do, just at all. I couldn't see that happening. Losing the series in ridiculously close fashion, you know, maybe Blitz and Detour go absolutely bonkers on you in map 3, and in overtime you lose. Something crazy like that. They're just getting kind of fish slapped by this team. Just spanked straight out. Very much disappointed me. So that was the big blooper. But the rest of the thing, just look at it. Vitality, Mouse, Na'Vi, all straight through. You know, 2 of them 3-0, 1 3-1, FaZe 3-1, and Cloud9, whose roster we've been talking about as potentially a legit squad that can be on the rise, that have been disappointing us this year, showed us at least something at this event. Sure, their only BO3 win is Sinners, but some people had Sinners making it through this stage. Not me personally, but clearly they've shown enough to other people that they could have made it through. So there's some legit wins, but more importantly, there was legit play from the players we need to see play up. You know, Icy had a god tier series against Sinners. Heavy God, I said it, I'll say it again. He was amazing in pretty much every game that wasn't that series. He was outstanding. So I'm a huge fan of what they've shown here. And I think the level they played at made them worthy of going through here. It's not like they robbed someone. It's not like they scraped through. They genuinely played at that level. Joined, of course, by Fnatic and Gamer Legion. Fnatic were a steal as an underdog pick when I picked them up. That was so free. I'm sorry. You may not believe in Blame F as a tier 1 IGL who could lead you to a major win. But this event is a pretty flat track if you're a team of this caliber. And you need a flat track bully on your squad to win it. That's exactly what he is, you know. In the tougher games, the bigger games, when you need someone to actually outdo like G2 level talent, you're going to lean on Matisse a lot harder, especially in those gun rounds. You're going to need him to hit his crazy shots, tear teams open. But in this one, you just needed Big Daddy to come in, mop things up, and he did. So I think this has gone exactly to plan. I said my only disappointment really is Sangel.
Yeah,
This came out exactly as it should have.
Yeah, I think even then, you know, there's a bunch of teams that went out, or a few teams that went out that you could probably put above Sangel as well, even in theory. Like Falcons definitely should have been. Saw probably could have been.
No, I disagree with that entirely. I think
No,
Saw and Falcons are straight up overrated, or in Falcons' case, they've just been bad. Like Saw overrated, Falcons bad. And so the fact that they both go out as well, whatever. Namiga, I'm kind of out on them. As much as I love Xanta, I'm out on them. I didn't see them making it here.
The only reason I say that is because I felt like they were very evenly matched when they met in Rest Regional, which was a LAN event. So I did feel like, you know, Namiga and Sangel, both of them could have gone through. I would have given it similar odds. I mean, it was kind of stacked. Like, as much as I agree with you, Saw are overrated because losing Eros Doce was a big loss, and Achille, it doesn't really replace that for me. Falcons have just been bad, but I think they're
just bad. Yeah,
there's
no two ways about it.
If we're just putting yourself back in time, I think the narrative, or the sort of the vibe, was that this doesn't really matter. It's the RMR that matters, and like whatever form they show up there, that's their real form. And it was still bad, so you know, then it's dog shit. But the expectation, I think, for a lot of people was that Falcons was going to go through. I saw people putting them 3-0 in their predictions. I think I also had them through, but I would have expected them to go 3-1 or 3-2, I think. just off of best of 1 wins, but they couldn't do that. Anyway, point being, it was actually kind of stacked, like especially with Eklot showing up in the way they did. I didn't expect that. Sinners showed up in a big way as well, which I didn't expect. Like taking maps of Cloud9 and also playing a close series against Gamer Legion there in the final one. Gamer Legion as well. I didn't think Gamer Legion was going to go through. I didn't think they would go through the Swiss. I didn't think they would go through the tiebreaker, but they managed both, and that's cool. Very cool.
Gamer Legion for
So
me were the one big thing that I didn't see coming. Like
yeah,
I could have told you from a mile away, a lot of these teams were going to suck, and they did.
yeah,
Gamer Legion I didn't pick in the double swing. No one on the double swing picked Falcons either. Like we were just all out on that. But for me, Gamer Legion were a team where it's like I didn't quite mesh with, like, vibe with the team when I watched them play before. Towson for me was just kind of as a move. I was wondering what the idea was. But when they got into series, yeah, all of a sudden they were able to just in terms of their structure, their tactics, it didn't matter that they didn't have necessarily a guaranteed set of firepower. Like, they have Flammers pretty much in every series, but there's nothing else really guaranteed in terms of players who are going to step up and frag. That didn't end up being a big deal because they also had the better caller probably in most games, the better system. Everything just meshed better for them, and I mean that against Falcons as well. As much as I'm a big Snappy fan, the like blend of his approach and what he wants, his vision, and the Zonic effect in terms of how the roster's built and how Magisk, I'm assuming, has some sort of influence in terms of bringing that system in. It has led to them being one of the weaker called rosters who've been perennially in the top 15. So that has been an issue. Add to that their lack of top-end talent in terms of rifle play, and they're just a bad team. So I do think Gamer Legion deserve a lot of credit for, again, Ash. Great job.
Yep.
It's easy to doubt the players on the team. It's hard to write off that coach at this point. The fact that he doesn't ever get a tier 1 gig, at least from what I don't know if there's been any offers for him to go coach a bigger team. Maybe because he doesn't have that historic tenure in the scene. He doesn't have a playing career of a Taz. He doesn't get gifted the top tier coaching opportunities, despite merit, meaning that he should have a long time ago. This guy's turned, shit into gold more often than I can count at this point. It's actually getting absurd.
Yep.
So credit to him again. I still think Slend needs to do more for me to love this team again. His sort of slow decline on Gamer Legion, like in terms of statistical output, what he puts out there, has been a bit worrying. But man, Flammus is the G. He's a Don. And that coach still has this team playing great Counter-Strike. So what can you say?
Yeah, I mean, they came through in a big way, but I still wouldn't put them to go big in the major. But well,
they're playing the opening stage. They might have a chance.
Yeah,
they might have a chance in the opening stage. That's the point.
There's just a very quick overtime note. Czech and Slovakian CS did actually kind of all right here. To begin with, they had 3 teams basically.
Yeah, they had a lot of flukes at the close qualifiers, but yes.
Sinners, Eklot, Unity. Unity, as expected, went 0-3. I would have expected Sinners to also go 0-3, to be honest. I didn't think they were going to make it happen. But they beat Saw. As much as Saw are probably overrated, Sinners were obviously underrated, because I still think that's an upset. They beat Eklot. That's a domestic matchup. But then they have 1-2 against Cloud9. Very nice. And 1-2 against Gamer Legion. I thought Sinners was going to win that. So they put up in a big way. And Eklot, I have to give a lot of credit to Krias. Because he has, not recently, but on this team, he has taken the IGL role. And a lot, Eklot have actually kind of gone up for the time that he has been in-game leader. This team is doing very well. It was an online play before. Now it's kind of at the RMR. When beating Zangal, as you said, taking map off Fnatic, overtime against Falcons. As much as Falcons were shit, that's still big players. We gave MID-RMRs a lot of credit for winning a series against the same team, basically. And that best of 1 against Gamer Legion, it's close, but they close it. That's props. For me, that's big props to Eklot. 2 players who it's interesting if I'm just briefly going to talk about them. Krias is interesting, obviously, especially as a caller. 4C is really interesting because he was one of those guys who we thought could be a next big opper. And I think mostly through just bad luck, like happenstance with transfer moves, he didn't really get that chance whatsoever. I'm not gonna say he showed up and was huge in this RMR. He wasn't, but it's nice to see that he's still around and like he's still slowly moving upwards, and that's very nice. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
D-
these
Detour the guy
Czechoslovak
to talk about. Yeah,
teams, like Sinners. I said this on the double swing. I was like, I don't believe in this roster because to get here, it required Oscar not just playing very well, it required Oscar playing god tier Counter Strike, and I was
yeah,
just outright just said, there's no way he replicates that, so they can't go through. They just can't. And to be honest, yeah, they put up a decent fight. It's pretty predictable that they wouldn't have enough juice. And so yeah, losing to Cloud9, losing to Gamer Legion, taking a map is nice, and on those maps they seem well prepped. They executed essentially at a high level, but they didn't really ever pose a threat just because they don't have that depth of star players. Like if they start poaching players from these rosters who are in attendance to this event, not playing as good Counter Strike, but have good names, like if they can get, I don't know, a 4Z on the team. They used to have him. They benched him for Oscar. Eventually, you have to just admit they're swapping places and just take a risk. Maybe go international in terms of the language. Pick up a blitz. They've already missed on Mikey, who's gone off to play an OG, I believe. That should be
not confirmed, but
not
should be.
Confirmed, but should be. And I still think Detour's massively underrated in this scene. Like you can tell by the way he gets benched all the time. Like I don't know, either he's an asshole or these teams don't get the value of him. I think that's the kind of the position I am with Detour. So no, there's still a lot to like in the Czechoslovak scene. They still have one of the best LAN scenes. You know, we just had another one of their LANs playing this week. Just on a side note, like they actually did have another one. Who was I watching?
Yeah,
it's a player called Monster. Yeah, playing for Brute. I was paying attention to their games. They end up losing to Eklot, but
they played in Prague, and it's a really cool venue, right? It's the one they do
Tip
like
Sport MCR. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's really cool because we know someone who lives in Prague, and he went there once and sent me a bunch of pictures and stuff. And it just it looked like the coolest fucking venue. Like
yeah, the pictures, the videos, the visuals always dope. When you look at the games, look at the stream and all that, you can see some pretty cool visuals. I mean, Sampi are playing Brute right now in the third place decider match. Like it's a really sick LAN, and a really sick LAN scene. But that's the thing. Like there's a lot of talent still in the scene. I just think none of it's really united, and they don't have a plethora of like mind-melting talent in terms of top ones. They just need to get the best they can together, and they might have a chance to make it through the major again. But for now, it's just a cool side note. I think we need to move on to RMRB though.
We do, yep.
Because, yeah, time eventually will be a factor. RMRB, well, it just finished this morning.
It's still a game ongoing.
There is?
Or to happen, sorry. The decider between NIP and Spirit.
Oh, yeah. So,
but we can write that off.
Yes, so today Spirit will play NIP. Spirit will beat NIP today, and that'll finish off the qualifiers, let's say.
Honestly, I hope they do. I hope Spirit wins. I just want to say that I hope Spirit wins. I'm sorry, but I don't. I think Spirit deserves to go through, and NIP just don't. So
yeah, but more importantly, Valve decided to get involved because there was some confusion. This started in RMRA, this confusion, but we're bringing up in RMRB because it's during this event that everything got absolutely fucked. Let's put it simply. It just got fucked. There was some confusion as to how, like, why the tie breaks existed to decide a fourth place team. It really didn't make sense because one rulebook said it was just going to be based off seeding, or not book holes, but just the seeding that the teams came in with, I believe. Who'd be fourth place and who'd go through to the elimination stage, who'd go through to the opening stage.
It was book holes. So it
was it on book holes? Okay, it was on book holes. And there's another one that was, we end up seeing one of the fourth place deciders played out. So it was a bit boggling as to what was going on. It needed clarifying. And Valve stepped in, and as they always do, they kind of misunderstood the entire premise, did something at random almost, and now we're very fucking annoyed. At least most of the time they do these sorts of things, it's not during an event. Like the whole community gets wound up with Valve making a big change. This time it was mid-event. They decided that teams will be assigned to the opening or elimination stage based on VRS, the Valve ranking score, which is one of the most confusing and idiotic things they've done in a long time. Potentially ever. Because honestly, most of the time I see their moves, I think people overreact when they get mad. This one's just horrifying. Is there any logic to this? Did they put something out explaining themselves, or is this just handed down from on high and we're expected to just deal with it?
So the details of it is that yes, the official Valve major rulebook states that RMRs shouldn't have, the European RMRs shouldn't have fourth place deciders. In the case of a tie, you decide who goes through to which place, to which sort of in the opening or in the what do they call it, elimination stage. They decide that on VRS. That's what the Valve's official rulebook means or says. Perfect World amended this rulebook with adding fourth place deciders, and supposedly Valve signed off on this. They accepted this rulebook with this change and presumably some other minor details.
Right.
They accepted this, and this was how it was going to be played. Played out fine in RMRA. And then in the second RMR, we had a lot of upsets. We had 3D Max and Big going 3-0. And seemingly reactively, Valve then decided, actually, no, we don't sign off on this change. I'm gonna be honest. If we're gonna assume, what is it? Cock up before. What do you say? I can't remember. Assuming competence over malice is what I mean. If we're gonna do that, it might just be that Valve didn't fucking check the rulebook that Perfect World submitted. And now,
Right.
only now that we have huge upsets, do they realize, and this correction is actually unrelated to what's happened. That would be stupid as fuck. But if we're gonna assume incompetence over malice, that's what I'm thinking. But seemingly reactively, they then decided, oh, we can't have 3D Max and Big going through to the main stage while G2, Spirit, all go to the at that point potentially Eternal Fire, Astralis as well, like big teams, while they go through to the opening stage and probably are gonna. I assume that they feel like, oh, they're gonna knock each other out. This is stupid, and they're like, if I'm gonna be entirely honest, they're right. It is kind of stupid. I do think that in the interest of having the best teams at the major, it's not. I do think it would be more interesting if we had
Hold on.
the best teams. Hang on,
Stop.
hang on,
Isn't the
hang
opening
on.
stage the major? Haven't I just been like beaten down into accepting the opening stage as just part of the major, guys? Like, why would it matter? Why would it matter if G2 and Navi end up there, or whoever the hell else end up in the opening stage when it's all the major? What's the problem?
What it matters is that they want these teams on stage, and now they have a whole other 3 to 5 matches to play before they can make it there, and that's just all the more opportunity for choking, or just having to ending up in a 2-2 situation in the opening stage where G2 play Spirit, and people would have been pissed about that, to be honest. They
But it
wouldn't
happened
have
at the
blamed
RMR
Valve.
too. They still had to play the
Yeah,
RMR.
yeah,
Huh?
yeah, yeah.
So what's the big deal? Like
The big
this could
deal.
have happened in the RMR too. So why are we so bothered?
The big deal is that the RMR is seeded based on VRS already. And I'm not sure that would have happened in the opening stage because we have the spots allocated due to through qualifying. So 3D Max, for example, would always have. Let's say G2 had gone to the opening stage and then gone through to the main Swiss. To my understanding, 3D Max would always have a higher seeding than G2 if that happened, like in the main Swiss.
Yeah.
And that's a bit broken. And the argument is that they deserved it. They played well. They won more games. They deserve that seeding. It also means that our complaints of how the Buchholz Swiss system works, shit out, like shit in, shit out. So it's I think maybe Valve are a bit scared of Paris, and I'm just gonna say, first of all, I think this is overly aggressive. I think what they should have done is just said no more fourth place deciders. The 3-1 teams get ranked by VRS, and that would have been great. So big 3D Max, they keep their 3-0 spots, they keep their spots in the Legend stage, and then the 3-1 teams get ordered. So Heroic don't need to play Virtus Pro to decide if they go there, because we just know that Heroic, or sorry, VP and G2, I mean, VP and G2, we just know that G2 are higher ranked, G2 go through. That would have been a more convenient solution, and I like that because we also lose another game which is, you know, at least one tiny step closer to the prospect of having all best of 3 Swisses, you know, where the argument of too many games gets smaller. I would have preferred that. I also would have preferred they do this ahead of the major. Some people were aware of this, and like I think Messi also, who endlessly digs through Valve's major rulebook as a manager, and tweets about it. He said something like, "Yeah, I knew about this. Like, I knew that there was a difference, and Perfect World had made a difference, and it's like it felt a bit weird." But then, you know, they changed it mid-event, and that's when a lot of shit breaks loose, deservedly so. But just as an example, if Spirit wins this decider, which is starting in 25 minutes, if Spirit win that decider, to my understanding, they are going to be seeded as a 3-0 team. So that's the gist of what is going on. If NIP win, they won't be. They will still probably be one of the bottom seeds. They're going to be in the opening stage. I also do think we get a VRS update. I think is the case. So the Valve ranking is going to be updated before the seeding is done. So just as a slight, like as a slight sort of consolidation, sort of, or whatever. Consolation. Sorry. Passion UA, they're still kind of fucked, but they were going to be opening stage anyway. Big and 3D Max, they still have a chance of jumping up in the ranking based on the wins they've had. And so they could still, you know, bring some of this back. 3D Max could. I don't think they won't leapfrog G2, but there's a chance they maybe go above Virtus Pro, like based on having beaten G2.
Yeah, that's realistic.
Yeah, so in that case, they would still be in the Legend stage, I think. So it's possible.
They have already in the global Valve ranking on HLTV, the live one.
Oh, are they already passed?
They are 13th.
Oh yeah, that's live.
Yeah.
So they are above Virtus Pro already. In that case, yeah, yep. They're fine. So 3D Max are still going to be in the Legend stage. So that's a consolation to it. I don't know about Big. I think Big are already too low though. So they went 3-0. To be fair, they didn't beat anyone except for Heroic, who was too big of a scalp to take. And Heroic isn't like Heroic Big is not a matchup I consider to be a huge upset. So as much as 3D Max versus G2 is. So sucks for them, but yeah, that's the gist of it. It sucks to do it mid-event. It's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like, to me, it doesn't really matter either because we aren't going to have it next year anyway. Next year, we're going to have, like, in terms of the change, do we have all VRS or do we have all, like, through the qualifier? We're not going to have a qualifier next year. We're going to have all VRS anyway. So it's a bit like, do you want the best teams? In that case, just go by VRS, but it's a bit boring because you don't get sort of the storylines of an underdog showing up on the day, that sort of thing. And you can have different views about whether you think such a storyline is bullshit or whether you think it's awesome. I like it. Passion UA have done it. I did just read a tweet from, I never know how to pronounce this guy's name. He works at the HLTV. BR Cho. Brucko.
I always call him Burko. Yeah.
Burko. Yeah, let's say Burko. Passion UA would not have been invited to the major if they had used next year's VRS invite system rather than this year's close qualifier and stuff. And they have just gone through in 6th place. So
yeah, I'm just going to throw something out here. I'm going to say the reason this move happens mid-event might be in a different way. Still ultra cynical, but for a different reason. It's not about, G2 might have to go through the opening stage and then they could face off against Spirit here in a 2-2. No, it's none of that. None of that. I think this might literally be, this is our world championship. The opening stage is a bunch of Asian and Americas teams. We can't have half the European elite rosters come in and just dumpster them and give them zero chance to actually go through to the elimination. That might just quite simply be it. Like,
yeah, you might be right about that.
Just like, we got to give the Americans and the Asians like a chance. So we can't have them face G2 Spirit. We'll have them face Passion UA instead, or Big, because Big, fuck you. Nice 3-0. Suck it. Go down and play the opening stage.
Yeah, because the wild card, you know, wild card and whatever the fuck their name is, FlyQuest, they have a chance to go to the top 16 if they play each other. But if they also have to slog through both G2 and Spirit, they're fucked. Like, so that's, you know,
that's always a factor, I think, because
it's probably a multitude of factors, and it probably is that, like, I would like to think that Valve are just inherently stupid. Didn't even watch RMRA to realize that this game was happening, and only now just realized. I'd like to think so. I don't know. There's probably facts out there contradicting me. I haven't read everything there is. I would like to think that they literally just didn't notice, and honestly, they might not even have known about Big and 3D Max. But realistically, it probably is a decision motivated by the amount of upsets, and they just didn't want this to happen. So
Yeah. No, it feels like an awkward middle ground between what was and what will be in terms of the way Major's going to run. A very stupid way to implement it, because again, MID-RMR, why?
Yeah.
But hey, it's Valve. As long as they don't have someone dedicated to actually giving a shit about the esports, we're going to keep getting seemingly like nonsensical decisions made, like just random things, prize money being factored into Valve ranking, you know, all these sorts of things that make zero sense to people who actually follow the esports, but to random dev 65 who's been given power over our esports. Have fun. Thanks for the mess. What chaos. But all right, I want to actually just focus in on a team for my side of this. I want to talk about 3D Max. Because look, did they go through in blistering, all demolishing style their 3-0? No, they played close with TSM, who, to be honest, I thought would do a lot better at this event. I'm now starting to believe that I'm just done with Nico and Valde, but whatever. They needed overtime to get past Eternal Fire, who are a legit tier 1 side, except when they're playing the rest of this RMR. And then they beat G2. Now, I, of course, saw that first map happen. I remembered, this is not something to lose hope over. 3D Max picking Anubis, getting smashed, is actually secretly the best sign I've ever seen to bet on 3D Max. I took those 10-1 odds, and I won that bet because, of course, they go on to smash G2 on Dust 2, win Ancient in absolutely gripping fashion, in the most aggressively French way possible. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. You never know the level you're going to get out of them. And I got to give so much credit to Lucky. Now, Maka was, of course, outstanding in the BO3 win over G2. It was actually, Lucky was also great in the first 2 games. But Maka, he delivered the way he's usually supposed to on this team in that BO3. You know, he's the IGL and the AWPer. A lot of their game plan revolves around him and his ability to find openings, win fights, and then call off the back of it. But usually their rifle firepower is supposed to come from someone like Jocko. It's supposed to, on his up games, because he's capable of it, it's supposed to come from someone like Gravity, who on the entry can do some wild stuff. But instead, Lucky just fragged out of control against the team who once used him as essentially a bit of a... He's one of the fifths, you know? He's a fifth. He was a guy who was there, take shit rolls, take the blame, and eventually get cut when they get tired. Sure, it was a very different org at the time. You know, they were French back then, G2. But I think it's still a bit of a revenge game for him, as far even though those games are 6 years ago. Like, he wasn't on G2 recently. It was 6 years. But I think there's an element of it that still factors in.
It's got to feel good. Yeah.
It's got to feel great to beat them and to play that well. Against 2 of the best riflers in the world, the best rifle on the server was Lucky. Which is just super cool. I mean, as much as I hate 3D Max's rebrand, I'm still rooting for these guys to do well. I'm glad that with the updated VRS, they probably still have a good chance of just being straight elimination stage.
So
I want to see them play that. Because they're a team with such a low floor and such a high ceiling that they could go out straight away, like 1-3, 2-3 in that opening stage. With the Americas teams, these teams they don't get many reps against, they may be a bit awkward. I'm really happy to see them going straight through because they can also give a really tough game to all the top teams just because they are so unique in their style, their approach to the game. Because they're all on the same page, but it's a page just basically of chaos. Like, it's a very chaotic team to watch. And I'm looking forward to seeing them go further. So yeah, very excited for 3D Max and so happy for Lucky that he's able to just dumpster G2 to get his team through.
Yeah, it's
to what he thought was the elimination stage and probably still will be. But
yeah,
at that point it was guaranteed.
I didn't watch a lot of them, but there was an amazing round I saw on Twitter, which was on Dust 2, when they were in a, I think they had a 3v2 at this point, 3D Max. It probably would have been pistols against rifles or something. There's a smoke down, like the CT spawn cross on long. And I don't know, I assume they had info that at least one player was behind in City Spawn there. And all three of the T players, which was 3D Max, just simultaneously push the smoke and just run to B, and nobody realizes. Like all three of them at once. So they completely, like, I can't, I just thought that was a hilarious round. It's such a creative round because that's not something you really prep for. That was probably just a call straight out of nowhere. And I was like, yeah, that was just really cool. Yeah, it's cool, a cool team. I like Maka. I've always liked Maka. Maka, who I believe was actually at one point close to joining Vitality in 2020. He was one of those guys.
As a rifle?
I don't know, but he was one of those guys in the conversation around the time of Nivera. It was like
surely.
him.
He had to be, because Saiwoo's there. There's no way you're signing him as an AWPer in 2020.
I actually, in 2020, I think, because the idea then was different maps. Already then, ZywOo was not AWPing on Dust 2. It was Nivera AWPing, I think.
Okay.
So there's a couple of ways you could swing that, but probably the idea was basically be Nivera if he was going to be on there. They also, I remember some other players who were like, it might even have been even earlier than that. It might have been around the time when Masuta joined. I remember his name mentioned with like, Nivera came up, obviously. He was one of the big guys then. Kios was also in the conversation, which you're going to roll your eyes at. And then, yeah, he's sort of been around a lot. He feels like Haji, but he might actually be good. Like, he's been around quite a bit. And he's always had a pretty high level. Now he's calling as well, which is obviously an additional challenge. But yeah, well done.
Yeah, great work. It does again raise, I mean, for me, a point that always comes up is, do we have another, like a full French team to make? And look, I'm not going to lie, I love this idea of having a full French team back in the scene, especially with Vitality. You know, they still have Apex, they still have ZywOo as of right now. You know, why couldn't you take 3 of these guys and make something work? Or if you don't like 3 of them, 2 and net you, something like that. But obviously, it's a long shot from being a guaranteed upgrade, just because of, as I said, the chaos we associate with this roster. And you mentioned that round. That's so typical. That's just, they won so many ecos as well against G2, like straight pistol buys, Glock saves. They are very bought into the system, with a great deal of potential for just chicanery, like nonsense, tomfoolery. They are there for it, and I love that. So, no, that's my pick of RMRB. Quite happy I got them as a favorite on the double swing. I was one of the only ones who believed, and here we are. They've made it through. Just see how it goes next. Yeah. You got anything to bring into overtime on RMRB?
No.
All right, let's move on to the small side retakes then, because we've got some a couple interesting points I think to discuss. I'll let you lead off again here. This is interesting. We're going to be talking about Falcons again, but I think a slightly different context this time.
Yes, because something which fell outside of my scope, like below my radar. In all the time that we've been talking about Falcons roster changes, we've always been trying to piece together all-star rosters, like super teams. And something we have failed to realize is that if Falcons have just benched all of their players, except for Magisk, and they're having Nico coming in. And that means they are in quite dire straits with the Valve ranking if they make one of these super teams. So just to briefly explain what I mean here. For the start of 2025, the first event which has open qualifiers is a Blast event in the middle of March, which I think is the Blast Open, funnily enough. That's the first S tier event which has open qualifiers. And even that is like a qualifier for a qualifier for a qualifier. Like there's so many open qualifiers that it just becomes very difficult to make it through there. So that's going to be very hard. They won't, like, let's just assume that Falcons end up signing something like Jimpat, let's take Monacy, and let's say Perfecto, just like a superstar team. Let's just say that's a team which ends up happening. That isn't a core which they've taken from anywhere. They have no standing on the VRS.
Yep.
That means there's only one event they can play before the middle of March, which is going to be Blast, whatever the fuck, I forget what the name is. Blast Bounty, which is the first one. And that only applies because they can get a wild card invite, which is that 3 players on the team individually have been a part of, have been ranked top 8 on the VRS in the past 12 months, which applies. With Nico and Magist, you only need one more player. So if you can sign Monacy, that would be him. If you can sign Jimpat, that would be him. That works out. That still hinges on them having a strong performance in that event to build a ranking, which they can then work off, which is a risk. I wouldn't take that risk if I was them, but they could. They will miss Katowice. They will miss the first PGL event in Buenos Aires. They will miss ESL Pro League. They could make it into the Blast Open. They are gonna miss the next PGL event in Bucharest. Like they are gonna miss unless they play the Blast Bounty thing and the Blast Open and get a high enough standing to get an invite. They should with the players they're probably getting, but that's a risk. So the next guaranteed event after that is like I think probably an IEM has some open qualifiers. No, they don't even have that. The IEM events have no open qualifiers either. They're screwed, and that could eventually lead up all the way to the Austin Major. So what I'm supposing is that Falcons are actually quite a bit boxed in into their different roster decisions. They would prefer, I would prefer, if I was Falcons management, I would prefer to sign a top 8 ranked core. And there's on the Valve ranking, top 8 are guaranteed invites to the tier 1 events. So that's G2 to heroic on the ranking. Beyond that, like you could go beyond that. You could probably get an invite since most of them have more than 8 spots in these events. You could probably get away with having like a top 24 ranking and still make it to at least half of them. Top 16 pretty much guarantees you. But there are a lot of options in that sort of 9 to 24 range. I can talk briefly about some of them. In the top 8 is actually where the most options are, I think. So the biggest option, of course, is to basically steal G2 score. Obviously, in the simplest gone, Monacy is definitely the prime target for Falcons. And if they can make that happen, they have a core. If they can make Monacy and one more G2 player, probably Hunter in that case, they could definitely. That would make them a core. That would keep them in the ranking. Right now, they're number 1, at least as of today. So that would be fine for them. But just briefly run down the list. Navi, I don't see them dropping a whole core because if that G2 thing doesn't happen, if Monacy doesn't come, you need to sign 3 players from the same team, and one of them has to be the Opper. That's what you need to do to keep your VRS standing, and that actually puts Falcons in an interesting position. I don't think Navi are going to let their core go. As much as I think there's a possibility they could go for, they would probably want a Bit or a JL or even a Wonderful. I don't think they go for all 3 or Alexi B or Emma or whatever. Falcons. So I don't see that happening. Vitality, Flamesy just extended, and Spinks, both Flamesy and Spinks are not options because of reasons. Apex, Zaiwu, and Mezzi would be the only core you could go for here. There's no goddamn way that you're buying Zaiwu out of Vitality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spirit's core, I don't think you're getting Spirit's whole core. As much as they might make a change or 2 as well, I don't think they're gonna lose an entire core. Now, the first option is actually quite interesting. It would be possible for Falcons to sign 3 out of the Mongols and have a top 5 ranking in the VRS. Like, you have to sign 9, 10. And then you can, I don't know if these guys could communicate well enough in English to make this work. I've seen interviews with them. They seem decent, but it's like, yeah. You could go for Mizzino and Senzu and 9, 10. And and that's your Falcons roster.
Oh yeah,
It
hey
is...
Zonic, you really here's your roster. You've got 3 kids who barely speak English,
yeah,
who've only thrived under one specific Mongolian leader. Have fun.
Sign him. Sign him. Sign 910, Blitz, and Senzu. There's your team. No, all right. It's not happening, but that is technically an option, which they could swing financially, and they might even say yes. But but it's like that's one of them. The big one is Mouse, because we've heard that they want Jimpat, and they probably would like to have Sui. If Monacy isn't an option, Torji is a decent option. So that would be interesting. Personally, I think they stay. Jimpat, I think, stays or goes to face. Sui, I think, stays or goes to face. Zershin and Torsi, I think, both stay. There's been a rumor that Zershin goes to Liquid, which is a different thing. But that would have been cool. In any case, I don't think all three are going to Falcons. I don't even think one of them is going to Falcons, if I'm going to be honest. So, yep. FaZe, I don't think they make huge sweeping changes. I could see like a Brokey, Rops, Rain triple move to Falcons, where like Brokey and Rops go for like the greener pastures and Rain goes for the retirement money.
Yeah.
I could see that happening. I don't know. But then the big one is probably Heroic, because you could definitely make a team out of any three out of Tessus, Shush, Dexter, and Kixon. So, and that would give them right now that's an 8th spot in the Valve ranking. So whether you want an IGL or not, you could probably go for Tessus, Shush, Dexter. You could go for Shush, Dexter, Kixon, Tessus as well, versatile player. Only Nerds is off the table again for geopolitical reasons. They could go for that as well. It would just be they just probably won't. Is the reason. So that's pretty much their options. Like, as you go down the list, you end up looking at like no, but they're not going to take a 3-core out of Eternal Fire or Furia or Saw. Like they're not going to do that. You're not getting anything out of Liquid. Complexity, probably not, because you're going to get a pretty shitty core in that case because you're not getting a leash. You're not moving a leash out of America. VP, no. Pain, no. You end up on Sangal, and then it's a bit, this could be interesting, but you have to sign Samey. You need Samey unless you want to play 5 riflers, and then it's a bit okay. Big, same thing there. You can't get Tabson because he has like 3 years left on his 5-year contract, something. And then you have Searson, who you need to get. You probably don't want him. And then one out of Crimbo, JDC, and Rigon. JDC and Rigon have pretty fresh contracts.
That's not really an issue by itself.
No, that's Falcons.
To be real, like Falcons, if they are trying to build the way we think they are, the level we think they are. Oh no, big players got a 3-year contract. What's the buyout?
Yeah.
What's the 6 figures still? Yeah, fuck it. We'll have the lot. Like it's not that crazy.
I think the final outpost in the desert that eventually becomes Falcons sort of options for signing a core is Fnatic. That could have been interesting. A knock. You could maybe get like a knock blame F Mattis would be kind of fucking insane. But knock is just on a loan to Fnatic anyways, and
it would be literally insane to do that. But yeah, okay.
But no, but you could go for body. You could go for Crims, whatever. Knock
doesn't make it more sane.
I'm just saying, like, there's players to get it, and Knock is especially available because he is just on a loan from Bleed, and I'm not even sure if Bleed are in a position to negotiate to extend that loan, or if they just call him back because they have a bunch of shit going on. It might just be that Knock ends up being, no, I can't play for Fnatic, I'm not on a loan, I can't do anything, because I need to sit on Bleed's bench. But then after that, we end up talking about teams that are absolutely not at all inspiring, because we end up talking about oh, you have to sign Pody, SDY, and X Kaspersky. That's cool, but it's not up on the level with like signing a Dexter, and
let me just dive in here, because we're getting out of the realms of fucking useful reality.
Yes.
If you are Falcons, you are signing Nico. You have Magisk and Zonic. So you have 5 majors, essentially. A guy with all the will in the world to go win a major, just not quite enough juice to have got it done, despite former rosters. And then you want to look to sign someone else. If your core that you pick out, so 2 more players from G2, for example, isn't from G2, Na'Vi, Mouse, FaZe, Heroic, and at a push, if you can make it happen, Liquid. If it's not one of like a combination of players from those teams, I do not see how this is considered a successful move. It's another botched surgery, essentially, like we technically had last time. Despite, I know Snappy went in there with the best of intentions to win events and play with the best players in the world. Like I know that for a fact. He wanted to go win, and he still believes he can win. He just thinks he got kind of screwed over in the whole controlling the roster department. That's pretty obvious when you think about it, how it was always presented to us publicly. Zonic is in charge of putting the roster together. Snappy leads on the server. that doesn't make a lot of sense, really, if you think about how well Snappy has built teams in the past and optimized. But whatever. If you're not signing those cores, you are dealing with another botch job. I mean, if Nico is coming, but you don't get Hunter Munacy, okay, you need to then go get BitJL Wonderful. Those are the 3 riflers and the 2 riflers and the AWP you need. Magus are going to call. That's another, I think, successful attempt at building a sort of super team. 3 out of Mouse, 3 out of FaZe. These are all valid options.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, my bottom of the list is Liquid. Other than that, we're talking about language issues, embedding issues, just because like Mongols are technically the 5th ranked team in the world. You're going to move a bunch of teenagers and their 23-year-old IGL halfway across the world to play in English. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And the rosters below just don't have the talent to be Falcons, right? They're supposed to be. Come on, they're giving themselves World Cups, guys. They're trying to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, the greatest thing since one taps. You know, they are trying to be the gods of esports. Hence why they have rigged the fucking esports awards. Hence why they have, built this whole like fictional world of esports to try and create prestige for themselves.
Yep.
They're not settling for the 15th, 20th best core in the world and hoping Nico and Magus can drag it up to the top. They're going to have a shit ton of money thrown at someone in the top 10, maybe 11, because that's where Liquid sit on the version I've got on screen. Anything else would be a failure. And look, there's a lot of ways it can work. MAUs are not a huge money org. If you throw enough money their way, they might have to just say yes. Take Jimmy, take Torji, take Shue, and we'll try and figure out a rebuild. Maybe we'll take Snappy in and try to let him build us another roster, because currently their academy isn't stocked with talent. Like, there's a lot of fresh kids in there. Like, they can't just promote and succeed again. Because this is what they have to do.
Yeah, the bottom line is you're not signing Nico and presumably a bunch of other star players to play online for 4 months and maybe 1 LAN.
Also, yes.
Like, you're not doing that. So that would be a very shitty start to an entirely new project. So I would assume that they're looking at this exact sort of same thing. And if you're Monacy and you're negotiating with Falcons, that should also be a requirement from his side. Like, if you sign me, you have to also sign Hunter, Snacks, or Mobs, because I want the VRS and I want to play LANs. Like, why is Monacy going to go to Falcons if he knows that he's going to play? He's basically going to waste the season, potentially miss a major. Like, it becomes dangerously close to dropping out of the 32 range to not make the Austin major. Dangerously close. So, like, you're not going to do that if you're Monacy. So, I would assume that's a requirement from him. If he's negotiating with Falcons, he might just have said no. Like, he might have done that. In that case, like, he might have said no already. That's like, we haven't heard a single rumor. Like, Nico going to Falcons has been all but confirmed for what, a month and a half.
Yeah, I've seen a couple murmurings more recently hinting at Monacy Falcons, but no, nothing even vaguely close to what we have in terms of Nico going there. Nothing as official sounding as even KRL's report of Jimmy saying no to a couple teams and Falcons technically still being on the table. Nothing even close to that. But no, you're right. Honestly, you're entirely right. They need to sign a core. They need to get a proper Valve ranking so they can play real LANs next season. Because we've seen it before. Sometimes a team with players who seem to be pretty close to their prime even, when they're forced to actually go play online CS to qualify for the LANs they're used to just being at, struggle, and they don't find the motivation. They don't find the will to just grind out online games and make it happen. So I think it's dangerous territory to end up there.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a big fucking off season. It has to be.
The wild card invite is sort of the saving grace, where you have a lot more roster freedom. You just need one more signing who is a Gympat, who is a Perfecto probably, who is someone. But there's a huge risk with that, because if you don't end up getting a top 16 VRS off of that one event, your entire season is wasted. Entirely. You have to play online.
Yep.
You have to play smaller LANs as soon as you get up to that level. You have to play a lot of qualifiers. And Falcons sort of, I just feel like that's going to lead to a shit ton of frustration for a player like Nico coming in. And that's absolutely like that's something which could entirely break the team after just a season. Like at that point, you might have Nico, just like self-benching himself or whatever. Like shit could go really fucking wrong over that. So yeah, they're in a very precarious situation, I think, and it will be really interesting. I don't think they swing this. I don't think they swing a core. I think, despite murmurings, I think it's really strange that Nico was confirmed for Falcons a month and a half ago. m0NESY was previously connected to Falcons last year. It didn't end up happening. And now we've heard nothing about m0NESY. I don't really see why Nico would sign on so early if m0NESY, was also in the conversation. Like, why would Nico be well known to sign the contract to the point where the CEO is speaking openly about it, while m0NESY isn't even in the conversation? So I think m0NESY is out. I think you're gonna have to go for Nico Hunter. You might have to sign Snacks. I don't fucking know. You're not touching mobs. Mobs is there because Nico is leaving. Like, you're not touching mobs. Like, another thing to all of this is that whichever team's core you end up signing, they have to get like, they lose their core. Like, they're gonna fight tooth and nail to keep that core. They're gonna upgrade other, like, if it ends up in negotiation with, let's just hypothetically say Jimpat is in negotiations with Falcons, and Mouse end up saying, what do you need to stay? And he says that, like, I want a longer contract, I want a raise, and I also want you to fucking change Torchi. I want you. If Jimmy says that, Mouse will say, okay, we will. Like, if it's on the cards to lose their entire core and end up in the same position where Falcons might be, they will do anything. They will kill to be like, yeah. Anyway, this is a long rant now at this point, but yeah.
Yes, it's an quite a big site retake, but yeah.
It's a very interesting thing, which I haven't thought of. I think finally, there's one caveat, one wildcard roster you could make, which could make it work, and that's Hooksy, because Hooksy was in the top 8 as well, and is available, and you could go for him, and then play on the wildcard sort of thing, and that I think is slightly interesting, like, in my mind. But yeah, it's it is a whole huge ass thing, which I hadn't thought about, and I think a lot of people aren't thinking about, because everybody is piecing together, Jimmy, m0NESY, and let's just say Perfecto. But how realistic is that? What does that mean for next year? A lot to think about. And I wonder if Falcons even are. Like, I assume they are, but
they should be. They should have someone in charge who pays attention to these sorts of details. But let's move on to my small site retake, because mine is truly quite small. I want Quack's opinion. I also want the viewers, your opinion on this. Is it just me, or is Train T-sided as fuck right now in matchmaking? Because having played it, I've played it now 6 times, I believe, in matchmaking. Each time with, like, 1 time solo, and the other 5 times basically with the same duo queue, like trio queue, 2 other friends. And what the game comes down to is one person on each team ends up with 50 enemies flashed, just spamming the fuck out of these piss-easy A flashes. The T side gets so quickly out towards Electric, out round Red. There's so many easy lineup smokes that everyone's just chucking for Connector, and the back, sort of where there used to be a train, that back opening towards Ivy. Like, everything's just getting smoked off super easily. Flashbangs flying everywhere. I don't play high-level matchmaking, like, at all. Like, understand, this is, not only is this not Premier, this is me with my buddies. We're all in our late 20s, never were particularly good, so now we're especially shit. Like, it's not exactly high-level Counter-Strike, yet I'm seeing floods of utility being thrown around the A site. It just seems so easy. And as a CT, trying to, like, use anti-rush utility to actually stop this stuff is complicated, because you've got to actually fucking line that shit up over the train to get it up and over and then down again. It's like you're hitting a free kick, except there's no topspin I can put on the grenade, you know? Like, it's far harder right now as a CT to get just instinct-based util to actually do anything. And T-sides are just flooding the A-bomb site far too quickly. Forcing, 4 A setups, which even then it's super awkward to just place 4 people on the A site who aren't just exposed to everything. And the B site becomes a one-man thing, at which point 1 flashbang and a rush and it's done. So it's become very T-sided in the games I've played. I'm just looking for input from everyone else. Like, how does it feel for you? Like, maybe people who are actually like high level, like who've grinding train a lot, who managed to get to a higher rank. Me and my friends are all in the gold Nova range for the actual ranking on the map, just that map. Um, is it getting better? Because train historically was CT-sided as fuck. T-sided rounds felt good to win. You know what I mean? Like, a
Yeah.
part of the struggle of train and what made it satisfying was just trying to grind out a T-side victory. So I want input, feedback. Quacker, how's it played to you?
I think you might be right. It's a little bit T-sided. I didn't play a lot of train just yet. But I think you might be onto something here, because it did definitely feel a lot easier on this T side in any case. So yeah, I think you might be right. It's a lot more open. There's a lot fewer trains where you can, like, before you had on the A side you had, like, you could use one Molotov and you could block off quite a bit, because the trains ended up being, they made narrow corridors, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which you could molly off. Now you just have a courtyard, 2 trains, and that's a lot different. So yeah, the A side is definitely easier for a T side. Yeah, and I think they've also cut off a little bit of maybe the creativity you could have on rotations for a CT side. Pop dog is a longer rotate now. It's not just pop down the ladder and then you're there. Like, if you're the B player pushing into B, you actually have to, like, it's a couple of extra seconds that matters. Going behind to, like, back 6 and Ivy, that's also a very different sort of vibe now.
Yeah.
Fewer entry points. So, like, I think a lot of the balancing they've upper on B side, that's no longer a straight sideline, like, very far, because there's
Yeah,
a shed.
that did feel like a little bit of a, like, it made it already coming out as a T and upper. There are
Yeah.
a lot of things that you could have to look at, but one of the easiest places for someone to shoot you from was just that straight line. So that just taking out that one chunk, it's not a huge deal, but it's again a little thing just adding on, right, to making this more T-sided.
It's clearly made to make it more T-sided. So they've definitely made that. I don't know if I would say it's T-sided, period. I haven't played enough matches on that, but a lot of the decisions are definitely intended to be T-side friendly, for sure.
Yeah, because I'm looking at my stats here. The last game I played of this, in terms of train specifically, I flashed an enemy and a half per round. Consider on the CT side of the game, barely threw a flashbang, right?
Mm.
So 3 flashes around essentially on T side, where 26% of my flashbangs led to an assist outright. Like, it's so stupid easy to flashbang the fuck out the A-bomb site. And from that same spot, you can throw a solid connector smoke. You can have one player straight out of spawn, smoke the sort of back 6 IV opening, the middle one. I'm not sure what we're calling it now, but you can throw too much easy util. I think that's the story of train, and I think this is indicative of philosophy where maps shouldn't be heavily sided, but instead it's created a map that just feels so T-sided. Like, if you want it to be 50-50, the game kind of has to be slightly CT-sided just because of the economy. And this is horrible to play as a CT right now.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. So yeah, the design decisions have definitely had their intended
And I
effect.
hate it.
Yeah, I'll have to play a couple of more games to know about that. Really, I've only played 2 so far.
Yeah, half the game is a piece of piss. I'm just chucking flashbangs to my brain dead friends who play every match like it's deathmatch, could just walk out the A-bomb site and fight people and have an advantage the entire time. It feels very un-Counter-Strikey in that sense. Like, I'm just spamming flashbangs. Like, it shouldn't be so simple in matchmaking. I barely had to learn a lineup, and I can get it wrong in a variety of different ways, and it still works. You know, it just feels off. But let's move on to more events to retake, because it's been a long week, and we mentioned it earlier. The Impact League Season 6 Finals are going on. And one of the games resolved as we were talking, which changed my points. So I'm just going to talk about them now. Imperial FE look set to just dominate again. I can't see either of the other semi-finalists actually beating them. I mean, you're going to talk about one of them, so I'm not going to bring it up. But Na'Vi Javelins, whilst they are a solid roster typically, I don't think they have that sort of extra gear that Imperial FE can seemingly find. Like map 3, after being shocked on map 2 in overtime to even reach it, they go back to 13-2 dominance. Like it's 13-2, 16-14, 13-2. Imperial FE are just able to absolutely outclass everyone because they have 5 players who can beat you. Plus they have great chemistry. Plus they have some of the best setups. They're just outright dominant, and I don't see anyone else beating them. Bigger Keeper was a team I had some excitement for coming into the playoffs. I was like, yeah, damn, they managed to beat NIP Impact, make it look rather easy, which I was not expecting. Usually NIP Impact, given the fact they have Vilga, they have the Dutch twins, Ramson's been really solid. I thought this should be a tough game for Bigger Keeper, but no, Zana went off. This group with Giuliano was supposed to give, in my eyes, Imperial FE a bit of a grudge match. It's the old matchup of the Swedes, who were part of the greatest women's rosters historically. Well, the maps Imperial FE won made it very clear. This team is still miles ahead of the rest of the field, and I don't see anyone catching them.
Yeah, no, it's Imperial FE. It's still playing catch up to Anna and the ladies. It's just kind of what it is at the moment. I think that's interesting in its own right. Of course, like some people very much despise dominant streaks in sports. But it's very interesting, and they play good Counter Strike, and it's nice to see. I don't have a lot to say about them. Like much of what everything has already been said about them because it's been this way for 2 years.
Far too long,
yeah. So
well, this is their 6th finals.
Yeah,
this is 3 years. This would be 3 years of utter dominance.
Yeah, it has to be.
It's actually crazy.
Yeah.
The fact that I feel like it sometimes goes under talked about is a bit weird.
Yeah.
Like this should be the most annoying team in Counter Strike. You know what I mean? Like kind of how in football, the big dynastic teams in all sports, they have an absurd amount of fans. All the talk in the media is always about them. I feel like there's not enough in the impact circles, especially just enough hype for Imperial. They don't get put up on a pedestal hard enough for me. Like they should be annoying me. They should be irritating as an entity.
I don't remember this because I wasn't really around. I did NIP were also ridiculously dominant at the very start of CS:GO when esports were still growing in popularity. I'm not sure. I wasn't there in 2013, but did NIP get the same recognition, or was that more in post when we realized, holy shit, this is actually an amazing achievement? 87-0, that sort of thing.
The problem is, I wasn't there either, and we do have the problem of this might be true media conversations when it comes to because we didn't have shoulder content for events and all this other crap. We had articles, but we didn't have much else, so it wasn't the same environment.
I mean, the other component of it is that Imperial FE are only ever as popular as women's CS is,
True.
which is not a lot at the moment. So, but they're building quite a dynasty. I think I'm gonna briefly check this. I say I'm gonna do a lot of things briefly. I'm actually never brief. No. I think for the first time, the Impact League is on ESL's mainstream since there's no challenger going on at the stream. Yeah, I was wondering if that sort of boosted viewership a bit, but it doesn't look that way.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Anyway, yeah. Good stuff. Have fun. My talking point is actually somewhat. I have not been watching too much of these finals, to be honest. The RMR has been ongoing, and that's a lot of other things has taken a lot of time. Booze and other things. There is one team which I think sort of flies under the radar a bit. They've been strong performers in several other Impact finals. They have had decent records against very good teams. And that's Furia in the Impact League. Furia FE. This is their fourth finals event. So when they make it to the actual LAN component of Impact League, they have played 2 grand finals. Actually, sorry, 5th, because they played the Valencia one as well. So this is going to be, if they win the semi-final, which is ongoing against Navi, that's going to be their 4th grand final, which is actually kind of crazy because we always think about it's like it's always been. Sorry again. It's actually they also played the Katowice Impact. I just realized. So there's a bunch of lands they played. Anyway, we always think that it's always been Imperial versus Navi, and that's been true to a point. But Furia have also sort of always been here, and I think they go a bit under the radar, mostly because they're in South America. Like they don't really show up in the regular season in the same way, obviously, since we don't really think too much about South American Counter-Strike in general. Just the regular run-of-the-mill games. They are very, very, very solid. And they are playing a semifinal right now. They aced their group versus Big Equipa primarily. K27 they also beat. It was best of ones, but they managed it. Big Equipa, very solid team. So yeah, I think they're a very interesting team, and I don't know. I just think I haven't really thought about it before, but they're here, and I'm curious to hear what you think about them, because they are one of the top teams. I would probably in like this playoff bracket is probably as close as we get to an actual women's top 4 in terms of Imperial, Big, Fury. I guess an NIP could be in that conversation as well. But yeah.
My
anyway,
problem with this team is they play so many games in Brazil, let's put it that way, that I can't look at them as a team and just be like, based off like their numbers, who they're playing, like get a good feel for them. So I'm always a bit up in the air when it comes to how they play or what to expect from them when they come and play lands. But historically, they've not been anywhere close to Enigma Galaxy than Imperial. Navi Javelins gets the best of them the majority of the time. Like they do end up outplacing them in the majority of events. It's why Navi Javelins were supposed to be the next team. By some people's money, Navi Javelins were the best team. They just choked every time they played a grand final against the Imperial FE crew. So I don't know. I think, to be real, if they came and played EU Women's Counter-Strike for an entire season, they need to win a tiebreak to make it to LAN. Like they're not gonna be able to just saunter through to the finals. Now they do only get 1 spot in Brazil right now, or South America, so they are having to beat out Fluxo Demons.
2 spots.
No, sorry, they do get 2 spots.
Fluxo Demons are also
played them here.
Yeah.
I'm silly. They do still get 2 spots. I'm wrong. I was thinking of North Americas. But no, that's the one big game they play every season is Fluxo Demons at home. Everything else is a walk in the park. So I think in EU they'd struggle because the European online stage was crazy stacked. Like, despite the fact that 5 teams make it out, teams like Letta, Cook, HSG showing up with Olga. What are they? Yeah, Spirit FE lineup are always scary. So the fact that you have to beat out all these teams who didn't even make it to top 5, and then you still have to contend with Imperial, NIP Impact, Navi Javelins, Big Equipa. If you get the wrong group, you might not even make it. So to me, they're a team who are still behind the European teams. They do give us a good show usually. They do make it quite often to top 4s. But there's a reason they haven't won any of these events. They're just not as strong. Just not yet. And their numbers always look ridiculous when you walk into these events. Like you look at their stats page, like what the fuck? Then you remember it's because 6 or 7 of their games a year in the online stage, it's just a layup. It's a 2-0, and there's rarely a contest going on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that was my point. They always end up looking quite solid when they show up to these lands, but I suppose there might be more to it.
They might be in the 5th, 6th conversation. That's the thing. And it's nice to get these LAN upsets here. it is an upset that they beat Bigger Keeper on a BO1. That's an upset. Without it, they probably don't go through. K27's probably a coin flip. It's a shame we're still playing BO1s. We're playing MR13. We shouldn't be playing BO1s. But whatever. Antiquated, silly things tend to outlive their usefulness. So here we are with BO1s. But no. I think they're a fun story most years. They usually get a big following. But I don't rate them that highly. And I expect them to lose 2-0 to Na'Vi Javelins.
All right, yep.
Right. The Eternal Shuffle. It's always there. And we got a big one this week. A lot of things shuffling around, changing places. Right. We start with, of course, Falcons have benched everyone except Magisk. So goodbye Ents, goodbye Madden. And goodbye Dupree. I've made a video about this. If you haven't seen it, I'm surprised because it's doing very well. And I don't see why anyone who watches our show would have noticed it come out. But yes, I did make a video just essentially examining this team's series of moves and the disaster it's been. I'm honestly not surprised they make this change, just cutting everyone. But I do worry for their future in terms of what they can bring in. We went into that in depth. And we'll see what comes next. It's a shame Simple didn't work out. I was looking forward to a Simple comeback tour. But here we are. Falcons, just Magisk and Zonic left standing. It's kind of Zonic's mess in the first place in my eyes, so come on, big boy. Solve it.
We did say last week outright, we thought Simple was all but guaranteed to stay. Because I did watch back to see what we said about Falcons. And that's sort of surprising. He won't continue with them. Opens up possibility for him playing somewhere else. Yep. I hope he does.
Red Canids have benched Nathan and Davideus. Now, this move caused a lot of raised eyebrows on Twitter, mostly because of the Davideus part, who played pretty damn well. I'll be honest, he never seemed like a weak link on the team. I'm hoping this is more of a he wants out and he's looking at other teams sort of move, rather than them thinking he's bad, because I don't see how they could. Davideus has been a very solid contributor for Red Canids. And if they have any problems, it lies somewhere else. Just going to throw that out there. But no. It's a bit of an odd one. They're stuck with Venom Zero, Henny, and Cold Zero now. And whilst Venom Zero is a nice player, Henny's been good. And Cold Zero, this is probably his best project in a long time.
Yeah.
It does feel like they now have a big blank to fill in the Davideus spot. And no guarantees of an upgrade in terms of the overall level of the team. Now they've cut Nathan. I don't really get where the team's headed. But there could be a bigger shuffle coming in Brazil, so that could be the solution, simply. A big Brazilian shuffle, and they try to grab some of the bigger names. Just, use the allure of Cold Zero to sell a bunch of people on it.
Yeah. Probably going to work.
Yeah, it probably will. Up next, Tai Lu have cut Jam Young. I missed this one.
This was a big move. He basically benched himself, I think, and rumors are he's going to go to Valorant. So, RIP.
What a waste. What a waste.
What a waste. Yeah, it's just a waste. It's just, Tyler project keeps not working out. Does Danking's contract never run out? I just went on Tyler's page. He's been here for almost 5 years soon. Anyway, he's been moved to the substitute spot. I assume it means he might play. I assume what it means in practice is they want to keep him for stuff like, I don't know if they have some qualifiers or anything, or they just want to make clear that like he's staying in the org, he's just moving to our Valorant squad or something like that. I assume that's what it means. It's hard to find like social stuff about this since it's all on various sites that are in Chinese. But
it's not easily accessible for us. But yeah. That's
what I heard. Geographically Challenged is the show, I think, with the Aussie guys. And occasionally Asian guys who talk about Asian and Australian CS, and they will have more details on this, no doubt, in what I assume will have been their latest episode. So yeah. I defer to the member for Australia.
Yeah, we'll see what comes of it. Jam Young didn't feel like he played particularly poorly. Just Tai Lu as a team, the roster doesn't make much sense how it's supposed to work, and they've fallen short. So if he does go to Valorant, yeah, it's a waste, but it's not the craziest idea that this team needs changes. Right.
Yeah.
Godsent have cut Wonder. Now, if you're
Yes.
like me and you're wondering what the fuck, who is this guy? He was on Godsent. Godsent have played Counter-Strike. Yes, because Godsent are basically the academy side now. There's a bunch of kids, and now one of them's been benched or cut entirely.
He has been cut entirely. His contract has expired. I know more than I can say, but basically, Goldson had the opportunity to keep him, fumbled it amid interest for other teams, and then those other teams ended up falling through. That's the bottom line of it. I don't believe it's a huge secret, but there's some details more to that. I just think that Wonder is an amazing talent. He is a Prodigy agency player. Along with a bunch of other names you definitely have heard of. He's very good. He is, according to many, he is the guy on Godsend rather than Male09. Like Male09 gets the marketing. He's still very good. I think it's a very close race between the two. Male09 gets all the marketing because he's so young. Like he started playing when he was like semi-professionally when he was like 14, 13. So that's why he gets all the credit. Wonder is, according to some at least, the better player. And honestly, in my opinion, he is the guy who I think can definitely show up and like play very well on a lot of different teams, both internationally um, and domestically here in Sweden. So I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him on an academy project. I would be very cool with that if Mouse NXT are rebuilding something. Actually, no, sorry, they just finished the rebuild. But I would be interested to see him on Young Ninjas. I think that could be really, really awesome. Um, and yeah, I just wanted to mention because Wonder is somebody who deserves to climb upwards in the scene. I think he's played a very good game. He's a very good guy. And yeah, now he's available on a free. It's actually a huge talent. Like, not that Godsend had too much money backing their contract in the first place. Like, you could definitely buy him out if you are NIP and you really wanted him. You could probably buy him out. But he's just here now. You can just sign him. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Yeah, the kids in Sweden just keep coming out, don't they? Like, there's just so many of them. This is another one of them. Shame nothing really has manufactured, like manifested in terms of top end yet. But there's so much potential that I don't expect that to last very like much longer. You know, expect these kids to end up somewhere like either Young Ninjas or like a Monty Gen or somewhere else to show a bit more of their fire against tier 2. I hope like that's what I need to happen is to see like a Wonder play a Monty. Like, fuck playing Swedish domestic Counter. You can't all just play in Sweden endlessly on teams that are clearly not built to develop talent and not built to play good Counter-Strike. Like, we can't all just go play for fucking eyeballers and waste our lives. Like, just go play in Europe. You all speak English. Just go play in Europe, and
Yeah.
please show something for all this promise. It's getting on my nerves.
Yep. Next up,
Yeah, Linvision bench flying. Linvision are,
the bench is flying.
yeah, literally. The roster is a bit all over the shop. There's talent in Westmel and Zaka. The question mark has just been, what the hell is the rest of the roster doing? And flying probably wasn't the biggest problem. Fufu still hasn't put up really much of anything. But flying has been benched. The Chinese scene is just in a bit of a weird spot, I think. And they need these competing orgs to sort of merge powers at some point. Like, can we make Tyloo Vision and just like mix some of the pieces that make sense to try and create one better roster? Like, this, it's just awkward right now. So they've made this one benching. I don't see a clear way forward for them whilst they still have a Fufu. Amelia still doesn't particularly impress me. Westmelon's still calling, I believe. I don't know. I think there's a lot of issues in China. This one change won't fix Linvision. Pretty simply.
Yeah, hard to keep up with this team, so I don't have any notes.
Yeah. Atox have cut 2, signed 2. The 2 they've cut are Score and Yami, which Score is the name you'll be familiar with if you know Mongolian CS in any way.
Yeah, a bit of wasted potential there.
Yeah, this team's been a bit of a weird one. They've now brought in Zesta and Accuracy. I mean, Dobu's technically returned to the roster. He was never truly gone. He just went out on loan to play the RMR, which is a thing, I guess. But they've brought in Zesta and Accuracy TG, who are players who've put up like crazy numbers as an entry and an AWPer, respectively. And I think Atox have actually done a decent job upgrading here. Not that I think Yami isn't a talent, but I think to make space for Zesta, who's been outstanding in Mongolian CS and in some of the wider Asian games he's played, I think this is a decent move. They needed an AWPer. They got one in. They still got guys like MIQ and Cabal to play like roles and also be solid contributors. Yeah, I kind of like Atox right now. I think this is a decent idea. They've just won 1xBet Mesa Asia Series 2. Not exactly playing against the best teams in the world, but hey, a little tune-up tournament, I think. And they dominated. So Atox, I think, moving in the right direction.
Yeah. You're probably right. Same thing here. This is a scene which is hard for me to follow. So I see them and they have decent results and I like that. But I don't have much to say. I think they're sort of in competition with the Huns maybe and the Chinggis Warriors to be that next best IHC as well in that conversation. It's an interesting combination of guys who could be the next best Mongolian team. But
yeah, I think they've clearly separated themselves here from the Huns and
they probably
Chinggis
have.
Warriors. I don't know.
I mean, this event is pretty dominant. But
yeah, this event specifically, but I'm talking about just roster, everything. Yeah, I mean, Chinggis Warriors technically have also made some changes. I'm not sure have we got those on the list? No, but don't worry about it. Chinggis Warriors also made a couple like attempts at upgrades with signing a player like Rue. They also signed eFire, who I'm not familiar with at all. Like, I'm not sure where he's been. He's been IHC renewal. Yeah, he's just one of those players who gets recycled in. He's 19. But no, I think Atox of that group are far and away the best one. And I think they've got a bit more of a scary roster. If they can get some structure behind it, some role play, like actually sorted, they could pose a real threat. Not necessarily to the Mongols, but at least in Asia, in terms of Asian qualifiers, beating the Chinese teams, qualifying for big events, they have a chance.
Yep.
Koi have cut Just and have signed Soul, which is... I didn't particularly care for the roster before. I still don't. Maybe Soul I could see as potentially a firepower upgrade. It's not clear enough for me to really see this as a huge move. How much faith do you have in this roster? Like, because I'm lacking. Let's put it that way.
I've kind of written them off entirely. They are close enough to dropping out of the top 100. They're already out of the top 100 on the Valve ranking and close enough to being outside of it in the HLTV ranking. They probably lose that now when they change the player. So yeah. They are how the mighty have fallen. They goofed up in the close qualifier. They were one of those teams who could have had a second shot when we had the original Perry Vision suspension, which was then overturned. They actually went 2-0 in the best of ones, beating Ens and Monty, and then ended up going 0-2. So, or they ended up going 2-3. So, yeah, they and that's basically the last we saw of them. They were in ESL Pro League and they were kind of trash. Yeah, they came last place.
No, they were awful at Pro League.
Yeah, so this is just not a team I'm interested in because they're bad. They're very bad. And since then, they've only played random, like, online stuff and Iberian stuff, and they're going to play some more before the season ends. But
they couldn't even beat GTZ in Master League Portugal. Like, fuck.
Yeah, so
this is bad.
Tomorrow, they're playing 9. And Koi came from the group stage. 9 were invited. I don't know what this group stage is. It's probably some online. It's not even covered by HLTV. It's a bunch of online stuff with a very small prize pool, and this team has basically fallen to... Sadly, it's basically fallen to the level of Permita in Celio, this kind of crowd, which is a shame because...
Yeah, and I think they lose to both those teams. Like, if they played each of them 10 times, I think they lose 7. So they're just very disappointing. Mopos, used to have such impact on that Movistar Riders team that made us kind of, believe in some players, believe in Alex, but he can't do enough. I see a lot of the games they lose, he's top fragging, but he's no
Yeah,
superstar. He's still a role player.
because the viewers should know this is Movie Star Writers. It's the same coach. It is Mopos. It is Davi G who was there doing some of their successful times.
Yeah.
This is a team which has been hugely successful. They've had players like San Pius and Martinez who are having great success elsewhere. Alex, who had not a lot of success, but he was elsewhere, and it's how the mighty have fallen, kind of.
Yeah. That is what it is. Maybe some salvaging with enough changes, but I'm not too big a believer. NRG have cut Automatic and signed George. Now, I, personally, didn't like this. Because to me, Automatic is one of the few players in North America who I think can still play real, like, Counter-Strike at a high enough level. So, I saw, who was it? Paladin seeming to say that, this is a good move. George, better firepower than Automatic. I don't want to say too much because I'm going off memory, and my memory is notoriously weak. But essentially a positive spin on it. And when I look at their last series they played against M80, he did play atrociously, it seems, in Challenger League. But I still believe in Automatic. I think he's one of the few players you can still rely on to play the right way, comm well. I don't know.
I think Automatic took a break. I think it was his move to step away. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
And in that case, George is probably one of the better replacements NRG could get.
Yeah. He's a talent, for sure. The problem is, he's also notoriously an onliner who stomps the shitty NA teams. And as soon as the other side learns the flashbangs exist and you can smoke off basic choke points, he kind of falls right off a cliff. We saw it at the Americas RMR, where they finished 15th to 16th, and his normal outstanding fragging output just disappeared. Like, completely disappeared. He ends up, like, in terms of his team, not even top fragging, a 1.02 rating, like, just struggling immensely. I don't see him as a talent with a lot of upward mobility. At this point, like, I thought there might have been a chance if he was able to frag out at the RMR, the Americas one, but he wasn't even able to really show up in a lot of the games. So it might be nice for NRG to try and sculpt him into that, you know? Maybe because they do have some big names. They still have Nitro.
Daps.
He doesn't have to do as much of the fragging. They've Daps on the coaching side, but they still have like Hexty and Breezy and OC, who are guys who've been closer to the top, who've had pressure, who've, also had their own fair share of fall-offs, beyond the NA play. So these guys will probably have the experience to walk him through it, but I don't really see it as a huge upgrade in the long term for international play, is the problem. It might do them well. They might win more games in Challenger League. But otherwise, I don't have too much faith in this.
I just have an interesting thing to note here, which I hadn't noticed. Remember last week when we talked about, or maybe it was the week before that, when we talked about nouns, among other things. And we mentioned a potential upgrade for some of these teams. Peeping is one of the players who we mentioned, and he is, maybe not on a permanent basis, but he's playing for nouns in this NA revival thing. So they might have actually heeded our advice and picked up a 19-year-old who was fragging half well. Yeah.
Oh, from Party Astronauts. Yes, you mentioned this.
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't, but you did. Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't know the name at all.
Call it.
But yeah, they played Akimbo nouns whilst playing with Peeping. And then I looked at the game, and Akimbo were playing without Laxi and without one of the other Mongolians as well. I was like, oh, this is just not Akimbo. Like, I don't know. There's some other players in here, like, whoever the fuck they are. This is just not Akimbo. So, yeah, 2-0 with a lot of caveats, I think. But all right. At ITB, Juan Flatro is taking a break, I believe. Yep. He's benched. ITB are a weird one,
Yeah.
They're quite a weird team. And I don't know if he was really playing that well on this team, but I also think it must be a huge disappointment for him that they're not able to get through any of these sort of online cups, to get through qualifiers to big events, or even just smaller lands. Like, they've just not been able to manifest those kinds of results. It might just be frustration on his part. Like, I need a better project, maybe. I don't know.
What they've said is it's a medical leave, like mental
Oh, it's medical.
mental health.
Oh, mental health. Okay,
Just
yeah.
burnout. Just
Fuck this
burnout.
team. I'm done.
just burnout. That's the idea. Yeah. I mean, Quad Flatro is a good player. Replacement is unknown. Cypher is available and is eternally connected to into the breach for self-explanatory reasons for those who know his history. Maybe it's him. I don't know.
Wouldn't be
This
the
is this
worst
is
mood.
it's a Smooya team and then a couple of meh players. Red Star is fine.
Generous
Yeah.
as always with the description. And
Mm.
Legacy have benched Barton, which I kind of caught me off guard. Because whilst Legacy did have disappointing results, I'm not sure if cutting Barton is really that big of a move. Like it seems like one of those cut the fifth. Like, we keep the IGL, we keep the 3 fraggers, cut the support player, and try again. And I don't know. I don't know about this move. I'd be more concerned about the level Dumal showed me at the RMR than anything else. And I'm not sure this change really addresses it, Because Dumal usually supposed to be your big star. He was awful relative to his own level. So perhaps there's other issues at play. But no, that's a bit of an odd move. No replacement mentioned yet. As I said, Brazilian shuffle incoming. See where he ends up, see who they end up picking up as well.
Very interesting, this move, since it breaks up the core, which has been long standing of Barton, Dumao, and Lato. Played on Godsent when they were assembled there, and I remember that Godsent was being a little bit of like Taco picking together the best Brazilian players, young Brazilian players, from here and there, put it together to a core which has obviously stood the test of time, playing together since that time. I don't think they ever really took. They did have a little bit of a not a breakup, but after Godsent they did split up and then reunited under Legacy. But yeah, obviously, the core has stood the test of time, and Barton is a fine player, I think. But as you said, it might not be addressing the issue at hand.
Yeah, it could be something deeper seated if they couldn't get really any of their star power to deliver outside of Lato. I think that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
But all right, final move. Ensathena have cut Emsan and Ada after a bit of a disappointing year, a disappointing season in Impact.
The whole year has been quite disappointing. They went out of Impact.
Oh yeah, they got
seasons.
smashed in Impact. They didn't win a single map. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Cut everyone. Cut it all. Burn it down.
Yeah, I think Ada said that she decided to leave. Ada being the IGL. Emsan, I don't know if she decided to leave or if it was mutual or if it was just they wanted to get someone else in. I could see it anyway. Either way, I don't think Emsan was a big problem. I don't think Ada was a big problem on this team. I just think Emsan actually think was quite impressive. Especially in the Impact season itself, she had quite a high level. Like in for her like relative to the rest of her team, I think she was second best in rating wise. They did get smashed, but hey, at least you weren't 0.75 rated. She was close enough to 1-0. She's sort of a role player. She plays the difficult roles. I think if she can find herself onto another project, I think maybe she could thrive a bit more in more star player roles. But I do hope we see her work her way back into Impact, because she has impressed me. She has impressed me quite a few of the games that I've been seeing. And Ada is one of those older, bigger keeper players from the original keeper roster, and they feel a little bit ever present, almost like they show up here and there still. So I wonder, like, I hope she can stick around. There might be a shuffle here, like the teams who dropped out, they can definitely make a lot of changes. Astralis have gone international. They have the opportunity to pick pretty much anyone they want up. I can't remember I think they're speaking English, but I think the ambition was to speak a weird Scandinavian hybrid later. But anyway, they're speaking English right now. Permit to have the opportunity to make changes. And now there's players to pick up. So yeah, good luck to Emsan and Ada.
Yeah, hopefully they can find another project, one that goes a lot better than that one. But all right, let's wrap up the show as we always do with the prospects of the week. A long transfer saga now finished. It's time to talk about these
Yeah,
kids.
this was a
Quirky,
really long episode.
you've been quiet. Tell us about your pick.
My pick is Flamus, who I think is the funniest pro player in the scene right now. Uh, just because of that one. You've seen the clip. You've seen
Yeah,
the
of
clip.
course I have.
Yeah. And a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I haven't picked him because he's funny. I've picked him because he's very good at the game. And he is one of the big reasons why Gamer Legion went through to the RMR. So that's basically the reason I picked him. He put up an amazing performance. And it's really cool that Gamer Legion managed to snatch him up. Like Ash spoke about this in an interview they did. Basically, how like they snatched him up out of Namiga just before they started having like results that people would have noticed. So like he would have become expensive. Namiga would have wanted to keep him. But yeah, so they managed to get him just in that window where they needed to. He just started to activate like right away. I remember when the signing happened, it was really weird. Like we thought it was very strange. But yeah,
Yeah,
he's
because
here.
at the time he was being signed out of Namiga to play Andu roles. Essentially, is what it felt like, and there
Yeah.
was an initial clash of like
No, he was
Andu
gonna
falls
play
off, and then no, but in terms of he came in for someone else, but he plays
Isak.
Andu roles. Is the point? Like he's not Isaac. He's another aggressive rifler who's just going to be a star.
Yeah, okay.
And
Yeah.
we end up with a saga where Andu's like, I'm now playing the wrong spots for me. I want to leave, and that's how we end up with Towson. So yeah, it was a weird move for us. Like,
It was a
we
weird
didn't
move.
think it was a particularly one-for-one swap. The change they actually end up making.
Yeah, well, it's worked out. He posted 126 across the 12 maps this week to qualify for the major. His first major.
Yeah,
it would be. Yeah. So yeah, well done, Flamus.
yeah,
By far
very
and away.
impactful, very willing to be like the focal point of a team. Stepping up to the challenge, yeah, he's been outstanding for them. Strong, large part of the reason why they've been able to win those BO3s to get through. Very impressive player. Hopefully they can build on from this, and yeah, maybe show us another level, another gear in the RMR, in the major opening stage.
Hell yeah.
But all right, my pick. This is a bit of a weird one, but I've been following this team sort of from a distance. I've taken Cleo, who is a Ukrainian playing for LNG. Now, LNG are what, like the 5th best Ukrainian team or something weird? Like it's
at best.
It's strange to think about them, but yeah, they have. Well, at best, don't be ridiculous. There are not 5. Name 5 full Ukrainian teams better than LNG. You can name 3, I bet, but you can't name 5. But anyway.
Yeah, okay. They're 5th.
They've had a week of playing like tier 2 CS, a couple weeks actually. It's been maybe even 3 or 4. It's been a while since they've been. Usually they came to my mind from playing a bunch of Ukrainian only events, like playing against Favbet, playing against occasionally like a Bait, Passion UA, and not being too successful, but at least giving them a good game and having certain individuals pop off. And one of those individuals is Cleo, who, interestingly enough, he's got one of those weird sort of profiles. He gets traded a lot, but also clutches a lot on T side. Always confuses the hell out of me, that sort of stat. Not too heavy on the openings on either side, so probably more anchoring. He's just a kind of mixed role, sort of pseudo star for this team, but does a lot very well. And so they're able to win a lot of games. Honestly, this is just a pick for me that's like, don't forget this lot. Like, I'm picking him. Pay attention to him. Pay attention to his team. I think they're going places. And they have a future right now in the scene that might be overlooked. So, yeah. I think there's a Ukrainian shuffle coming soon. I think like Bait are going to be very disappointed with their roster's performance at this last couple of events. They're going to look to make changes. I think Passion UA, certain players might get picked up for other rosters. Because if you're watching them from afar, Fear has been fragging IGL for this roster, performing outstandingly well and getting them actual results, I expect them to not make changes themselves, but lose players. Like Jambo is such a talent as well. If you're a mouse sports, you might lose a couple guys. Why not take a risk on like Fear Jambo? These are the sorts of moves I'm talking about. Like there's changes I think coming in Ukraine, so you have to get familiar with these players. Cleo especially, 20 years old, a bit of a multi-tool as a rifler, does a lot of the right things. Keep an eye out.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed this guy. LNG I had sort of noticed, but I always felt like they were almost in the TNL range. And like these new projects, Sky Fury, I think it was it Zeus who came in and did that just the other week. Or whatever the fuck they're called. What are they called? Sky Fury, yeah.
There's a team called Sky Fury, yes.
Yeah, that's
they are coached by Zeus, yes.
Yeah, he started this thing. But they've had solid results. They just won United 21. They've started sort of looking up from when I was last aware of them. Yeah, they won United 21. The one before that, they came third. Yeah, they're just playing a good game. Good pick. I didn't know about this guy, so yeah, this is the beauty of Retake the Week's prospect of the week. Sometimes you find out about someone you didn't know about.
Yeah, I think he's shown a little bit of something, and the team as well on the rise. So yeah, that's the show. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment telling us your thoughts. Let me know about Train especially. But yeah, sub if you want to see more content. Remember, members get special privileges, accesses, and of course, the member Q&A is coming up, so don't you miss it. Yeah, that's all for this one. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.